Welcome to Conversations with Leaders, an AWS podcast focused on personal lessons of leadership, culture, and technology from business leaders across the globe. Enjoy today's conversation.
Hello, this is Tanuja Randery, Managing Director of Europe, Middle East, and Africa for Amazon Web Services. Welcome to another episode of Conversations with Leaders. In this series, I will be speaking with CEOs from across the EMEA region about what it takes to transform business and society, how they are leveraging data and technology to accelerate growth and innovate, and their insights on topics such as sustainability and addressing the digital skills gap. We will also be providing a glimpse into the personalities behind some of our great leaders of industry. On today's episode, we will explore the insights of an exciting entrepreneur transforming the energy industry. With his technology background, he has built and sold multiple businesses, including a telemedicine provider and an e-commerce platform. With a passion for disrupting industries that underserve customers and society, the green energy company he now founded and runs serves 7.7 million customers in 18 countries and manages one of Europe's largest renewable energy portfolios. His passion for sustainability started early when he joined Greenpeace at the age of 15. And he deeply cares for the environment and social justice. His vision for cheaper, greener power has attracted over $2.3 billion in funding, and he's recently been honored with the President's Award by Tech UK, and in 2024 received a CBE in the King's Birthday Honours. He studied economics at Cambridge University and just received an honorary doctorate from the University of Teesside. It's a pleasure to be speaking to the founder and CEO of Octopus Energy Group, Greg Jackson. Welcome to Conversations with Leaders.
Hello, Tanuja. What an intro. I'm very excited to be here.
What a career. The intro is only slightly reflecting your total career, I have to say. But Greg, I'm so thrilled to have you on this podcast. So exciting that we are here. Let me start with a simple question. I've heard on Fridays you do something a little different at Octopus Energy, a 5:15 p.m. Team Friday dinner. Tell me more about it and why is it so unique to your culture?
Well, we started doing something called family dinner right at the beginning of the company. We get the whole company together across the world. The idea is that just like a family dinner in a family, you bring everyone together. We will typically have thousands of people online on the video call, many in person when they're in offices kind of sit around and watch it together. And it really enables every function to remember we're all in the same thing so that we're all on a shared mission and we all respect each other. And actually our colleagues across the world and across different functions and business units are all delivering fantastic things. Because I think otherwise companies often start to fall apart.
Oh, I love that. I think you're so right, particularly if I think about what we went through in COVID and everything and all of the return to office initiatives. We're all trying to get back to the core of our cultures, right? And so to me, this sounds like a simple but fabulous connectivity point between all of your team. Can I pick up on something else, thinking about your background and your early start, actually? I like asking this question a lot. You know, my understanding is that you became interested in sort of technology and coding in a very early age. You went to sixth form college to study economics, complete your A-levels before you went on, I think, to Pembroke at Cambridge. Your first job was, a milk round that earned you £15 a week. Your parents, I'm sure they had a huge impact on you and what you ended up doing. What got you to found companies? What got you to being a founder? Like, why didn't you just go join an energy company or something like that?
It's a great question. We can always kind of try and retrofit the story, but I think the reality with me is that, first of all, my mum was a single mum. My parents got divorced when I was 8, my sister was 7, my brother was a year old. Mum didn't have a proper job. She kind of worked in a bar in evenings, but she started doing a degree and studying, and on top of that, she campaigned for the things she was passionate about. And so somehow, like we all know how hard it is to be a parent, to be a single parent with 3 particularly young kids, incredibly hard, with no money, even worse, juggling, part-time work and then studying and then doing all these things. And there were a few things came out of it. The first was, she was restless and then, just boundless energy, still is. And that's inspiration. It rubs off on you. I think the second thing is one of the ways she managed was she devolved responsibility. So that's probably about 10 or 11 years old when she sat me and my sister down and said, look, every week I get a small amount of money from the government to look after you two, to buy clothes and things like that. So I'm going to give it to you. And so from here on, you do it yourself. She said the same with washing. She said, like, I'm not going to wash your clothes anymore. You can wash your own. Here's how you use the washing machine. And you know what? So he took responsibility for the basics of life, but also making decisions. So I remember I didn't want to buy clothes with this money. I started buying little bits of electronics, like buying little books that told me how to make simple circuits. And then I befriended the guy in the electronics store, and he taught me so much about how transistors worked and what a MOSFET was and things like that. And from this, I was tinkering. But I think that ability that we were given to make decisions early on gives me great comfort. I don't need to be spoon-fed. And I think it's an interesting thing about most employers, massively spoon-feed people. And, on the one hand, it's comfortable. But on the other hand, you lack that sense that what you're doing makes a massive difference. And so, I mean, by the way, and there's no criticism of that at all. I think, within our organization, not everyone here is an entrepreneurial leader, although we have a great entrepreneurial culture, I think. But for me personally, look at how my mum just quested all the time for the things she believed in. It left me saying, look, if I think I can do something better, now I'd rather do that than roll my eyes and get on with something.
I love that. It's so awesome to have had your mom create that so early in your career. And, when I interview people on these podcasts, I think there is something very special about the environment that you grew up in and what that does for you. And then, frankly, the grit and resilience and strength that comes from that upbringing, which is marvelous. So maybe going to specifically to what you are doing at Octopus Energy, if you don't mind, feels more like a technology company than a utility provider. Is that how you intentionally designed it?
Totally. I think when you understand how to build technology, you can see how a lot of incumbent corporations in sectors like energy have often been nationalized or run by monopolies and things like that. Is that as they've adopted technology, they've used it essentially to digitalize the existing human processes. A great example would be, most energy utilities around the world will send you a bill every month or every quarter. And they'll be doing it on a certain date because in the old days, they'd have an army of people going out reading in meters. And then they'd be submitting the meter readings and, clerks would assemble those into a ledger. It doesn't have to be like that. The reality is you're getting meter readings all the time. So you should just be able to open your app and see where you stand. Now, by the way, we may still choose to provide one, but you should be providing it based on this kind of digital insight that billing is a continuous process. And really, when you look at it, you go like, well, how many processes here actually need to be manual? You can imagine if you start from scratch, you just build a big robot that runs an energy company, and then you attach some people to the robot, rather than having, kind of a whole load of departments and processes which you try to digitize bit by bit. So I guess we got the opportunity to reinvent it in that framework. And so, it runs very much in the way that a business like Netflix would run. Netflix don't have an army of people like shifting stuff around, and utilities don't need that either.
That's a perfect point, because I wanted to understand from your perspective the core thought behind the Kraken platform, which I know is a core part of the way you deliver your customer experience. Where did the thought of that come from?
First of all, my co-founders and I previously built a business that built enterprise software. And what we saw was time and again, enterprise software was specified by looking at your existing and historical business processes and then creating a set of requirements to deliver those. And then over time, you've got more and more new products and regulatory requirements and customer demands. And to solve these, you keep adding more and more to that core platform. And it becomes impossible to change anything because everything is spaghetti wired into everything else. And you kind of grind to a halt. And you end up with really big, heavyweight, expensive to maintain, slow, sclerotic systems and processes. And every every energy industry, energy company in the world kind of gone through this. They seem to have a lot of manual processes that make a lot of errors. All of this results in a poor customer experience and higher bills than necessary. Not only that, but as we're entering the world of renewables and of electric vehicles, of solar panels on millions of rooftops, you go from a world where big data in energy used to be a quarterly meter reading or once a month, to a world where smart meters give us a reading every half hour. And then that's for consumption. And then you look at an electric vehicle, to optimize the charging of an electric vehicle, to put as much electricity when it's cheap and it's sunny and windy. We process 3 billion data items a day, optimizing 29 variables for every individual car. And you've got to be forecasting, because you've got to say, like, what is the grid price going to be over the next 24, 48 or longer hours? Because what you don't want to do is fill the car with electricity now and then discover it suddenly got cheaper. And to do that, you've got to be forecasting the wind and the solar and what's going on with the interconnectors with other countries. Suddenly, you've got a colossal amount of data, both in consumption and generation, and in the shiftability of generation. Anyway, so the whole point is, suddenly a utility goes from something that could cope with relatively basic data capabilities to a huge data and AI machine. And that's what we wanted to build, because by doing this, the real magic of this is that if you don't do what we're describing, the move to renewables is going to put bills up for everybody. But if we do this, we can grab that cheap energy and make the most of it, and it's going to bring bills down. And that's what we're now delivering at huge scale.
That's incredible. It's like unlocking an energy grid that works like the internet, right? And I think you summarized it so beautifully that it is all about the data. That is the asset of the organization, right? And nothing else. And then if you can transform that data to actually give you these actionable insights, then you can drive, as you say, decarbonization. And so data is the only way, and then applying machine learning, as you said, and to be able to bring a whole different level of productivity improvement that's going to then enable us, right, to deal with the fact that the demand isn't going to slow down. It's only going to get more, right? So you've got the big demand problem and a huge supply issue, and we got to get those things talking to each other, which is what it feels like the platform does.
It does. In fact, I think it's something like Amazon Video, right? You broadcast in Super HD, and not broadcast, you stream in Super HD anything anyone ever wants to watch. That wouldn't be possible without huge amounts of, for example, compression and decompression to get, to deal with all the different networks it has to go through. But if you didn't have all of that clever stuff in the background, you couldn't scratch the surface of where we are. And it's exactly the same with energy. But the energy system is like 2 or 3 decades behind the stuff we do on the internet. Now, we can't wait 2 or 3 decades. But fortunately, with technology like Kraken, by the way, huge amounts of work we do together with you at AWS, honestly, we don't have a single on-premise server in our entire business, right? Everything's done in AWS, not only for us, but for all of Kraken's clients. Because by doing this, we've got that incredible amount of computational power and data instantly available, scalable and down. But the point really is that by doing this, we can get dramatically more value out of the grid. As you say, we have to do this. But the amazing thing is the investment and the scaling of wind, solar, batteries and other things means that they are now cheaper than fossil fuels if you do it in the way we're describing. It's actually an upgrade. And I tell you, one of my favorite statistics at the moment is here in the UK, we've got our biggest business, and Octopus alone has about 170,000 electric vehicles, which plug into us. Like, people get home, they plug in. We then use all this clever stuff to decide for each car an individual charging schedule. Collectively, that's about a gigawatt of power. In fact, more than that. First of all, and for most people who don't know what a gigawatt is, it's the same as a nuclear power station. A year ago, it was 5 times smaller. So essentially, we've built a nuclear power station in a year with no cost. And the drivers who use this product, it's called Intelligent Octopus, the people who use that drive for 7 times cheaper per mile than diesel or petrol. Quite often in the past, people have thought that electric vehicles are expensive, renewables are going to cost us more, but that is now history. Electric vehicles save you money, and you're getting that by matching it with renewables through intelligent optimization.
We hope you're enjoying this discussion. To engage with other business leaders on these topics, follow us on LinkedIn at AWS Executive Insights. Now back to our conversation.
You talked about your customers, our customers, the Octopus Fan Club. Can I just get you to explain where that came from? Because it ties into this whole save money, make it easier.
Yeah. One of the things we've done is we said, look, we know that the physics of renewables is cheaper than the physics of fossil fuels, and of course better for the planet. But how do we give people like a tangible kind of outcome from the fact renewables are cheaper. One of the great things we did was, we basically got a bunch of wind turbines, and if you live near them, you get 20% off your electricity when it's windy, 50% when it's very windy. And what we found was, first of all, these products were totally oversubscribed. You know, we don't have enough wind turbines. And the amazing thing was 26,000 communities and individuals have got in touch with us asking for wind turbines near them. And so what it proves once again is if you identify consumer benefits, then people want stuff. We turn NIMBYs into IMBYs.
You know, you said something really important, and it's super core to the way we do business as well. We don't think about products in absence of what customers want. What's the point in that, right? And working backwards from our customers. And so customer obsession is something that is really, I think we live and breathe it all the time. And I think what you've done here is literally worked backwards from what customers require to give them something that is better. And in a way, then that becomes such a positive flywheel. You never have to worry about finding customers. They find you.
Well, it's true. And I think that often in business leadership, one of the challenges is you get stuck into these suboptimal vicious circles. So, for example, in energy, the traditional model for energy companies was they'd win customers at a low price, and then as soon as possible, they'd hike it to a high price and hope the customer didn't notice. Now, this meant that, for example, in the UK, every customer you won cost you £300 or £400, and then half of them would leave you after a year when they spot you'd hike the price. So, and in a world where, ordinarily you might only make £100 per customer per year margin, it means it'll take 8 years to pay back, right? So then you have to overcharge your loyal customers even more, and it's a vicious cycle. And the question was that's not customer friendly. Customer friendly is I'm going to recruit you on a fair and sustainable price and keep you on it. We've delivered on our promise. And you can build a long-term relationship. But you had to break the cycle. I think we win 40,000, 50,000 customers a month in the market without doing those dodgy tricks, because they just want what customers want. It's great value, but they don't want to be deceived. But, I was reflecting on this, which is, we talked earlier about the family dinner on a Friday night, bringing the whole company together. The other key ingredient in my week is the 8:30 management meeting on a Monday. Every Monday, since we started the company, we get the most senior people together. And we review, 100, 200 pages of data on the performance of the business. And interestingly, though, we're not looking at financial data. We're looking at customer data. How well have we delivered for customers? How well have we delivered the initiatives that are going to improve our service? How well have we delivered on initiatives that are going to create new value? These kind of ideas that capitalize on renewables and smart use of electricity. All of it in the benefit of customers. And, I was sitting there with our CFO a couple of weeks ago, and I suddenly realized he sat in these meetings for 8 years since we started the company, and he is part of that. He's not sitting there going what about the margin? What about the margin? He's sitting there, why did we let customers down in this scenario? What can we do to help them in that scenario? So I think that is, that's our version of customer obsession.
That's incredible, Greg. I was going to ask you that actually, because you've grown incredibly fast in the last few years. How do you maintain those kind of core things that are important to your culture, the authenticity of your leadership, not just you, your leadership team, whilst you still grow at that pace?
I think it's the relentlessness of these cultural defining processes. So the Monday management meeting, we have very little turnover at the senior level. And now very rarely we're bringing a new senior manager. This means it's got very slightly bigger. But basically there's a team where this is their DNA. Coming out of that meeting on a Monday morning, what we've decided, agreed, or observed cascades through the business very quickly. And it means that their senior managers know what matters. So by 9:15, all the senior managers are disseminating what matters. I think then coming back on the Friday, the stuff we choose to highlight in family dinner says what matters. So I think they are really key. I think the other bit though is decentralizing decision making so we can maintain the same velocity of activity, innovation, decision-making at scale as we did do when we were small. And I think what that means is, for example, there's no innovation department. Innovation, it's not like a small business has an innovation department, just interacting with their customers, kind of observing what competitors do and continually coming with ideas. And that's the way it needs to be here. So I think in a business, every time you're making a decision to do something new, people worry about the risk. And they forget about the risk of not doing new stuff. And that, they're different risks because when you do new stuff, something might go wrong. But if you manage it well, it'll go wrong at a small scale or the impacts will be manageable. But the failure to do stuff creeps up on you over time. And one day you're no longer relevant, or the problem is hard to fix, or you're going backwards. And I think that's the bit that, we just have to be so conscious of every day.
Well, you bring up a point that was also on my mind. So it's a perfect segue, actually. This learning from failures. In fact, if you're not failing, something is wrong, because you're probably, like you said, super risk averse, right? Not doing anything. I wonder, can you share maybe one lesson that you've learned from a failure and how that contributed to your Octopus journey?
I actually find it really hard because we're so comfortable making failures. Your founder, Jeff Bezos, has got this incredible interview he talks about. He says, look, I've made billions of dollars of failures, but I don't mind, because we hadn't tried stuff that could fail, we wouldn't have found the things that did win. I mean, along those lines. And I feel the same. And I think he says, we'll take risks all the time. We won't bet the company risks. So I generally don't have great examples.
No, I love it. You're right. There should be plenty of these where you can remember them, right? And this is Jeff who came up with this. But we talk about one-way door and two-way door decisions. And you've just basically described that, right? Which is a one-way door decision. You do need to put some thought into it.
You know what? I think culturally for us then, very few decisions are made by one individual. It's not there's a committee, but people will talk it through with one or two or three others. It'd be very much like, I think about the model in an airliner where you've got the pilot and the co-pilot. And for example, one will read the checklist while the other ticks it off. And when they're making decisions about routing or handling the weather, one will discuss it with the other. And that discussion is a really important part of helping ensure you made a good decision. What they're brilliant at is making quick decisions, because that's how you ensure you don't crash the plane. And so I think I often describe it as we've got a lot of consensus management. Now, that doesn't mean consensus across the company. It just means that the small number of people who are looking after an area or initiative or going to work together on it will have a discussion. If there's a disagreement, it doesn't go ahead until they've got agreement or they escalate it. And that process isn't a failure. It's literally just saying, hey, look, as a company, we don't want to be stuck here forever.
Two questions for you remaining. One is, how is generative AI, because you're obviously a huge data, machine learning, AI, company already, and cloud native. How are you using generative AI technology very specifically? And then I'll come back to my last question after that.
During the energy crisis, which is in Europe when energy prices went up, wholesale price of gas went up 15-fold overnight. It's something we were getting inundated with customers. We're getting twice as many calls as usual, they're lasting twice as long. And it was like, how do we support customers through this? We've got this reputation for caring about our customers. And yet, if we're not careful, we're going to drop the ball. So by May of 2023, 45% of all of our customer emails were being answered by generative AI. And that persists to this day. Incredibly, it gets a higher customer satisfaction rating than emails written by people. By the way, that is partly because obviously it's answering the ones where it's going to do the best job. So the amazing thing is we're getting better customer satisfaction from generative AI than we do from emails written by humans. And by the way, part of that is obviously the AI is being used where it's most effective, and humans are signing it off. Although more than 50% of the emails, the humans may change one word or fewer. So basically, more than 50% of the time, they're happy that the generative AI is doing great answers. But the AI has got access to that entire history of an account, and often when there's an issue, for a hard-pressed human, they're not going to have time to dig in and work out what's going on. Whereas the AI can find the real causes. So it's often good at solving complex problems. And the other bit is it's good at empathy. This may sound amazing. Hard-pressed humans again. The first one I saw was an email from a customer that had been in hospital. And the AI wrote the answer. It said, first of all, at a time like this, there's more important things to worry about than your energy bills. And then it signed off by saying, but most of all, wishing you the very best for a speedy recovery. And I think we've got to learn how to handle the fact that the computer seems more human than we do sometimes.
Right. I have one last question for you. What is the best advice you've ever received that has enabled you to be the leader you are?
Can I give you two?
Or the worst, by the way. Sometimes that works better. Yes, of course. Give me two. I love that.
The first one was, I read a piece by the founder of a magazine called The Big Issue, which was there to help homeless people. And he said, behind every entrepreneur is a trail of destruction. And honestly, it enabled me to just relax, because the thing we were talking earlier about making mistakes, it's the fear of making mistakes that holds us back. And the flip of that was being comfortable. If you do make a mistake, there is going to be a negative consequence. And that's okay if you're building much more positive consequences on the whole. And it made me particularly feel better about things like the phone calls I haven't returned or the emails I've dropped, because we all do these things and they sit there eating away at us. And once we get used to the fact that will happen, I think we can be much more positive going forward. I think the second was a guy called Philip Rees, who was the chairman of a bank called Zopa, a neobank that I was on the board for a long time. And he said, Greg, 95% of issues are kind of below the plimsoll line. It doesn't matter. 5% of issues are going to make a real difference. So don't fight on the 95. I give my view, and if people run with it, that's great. And if they don't, I'm just going to let it go. And 5% of the time, it's actually something I'm going to dig my heels in. And I think, again, that was extraordinary advice, because it helps you say, like, when people ask me for my advice, I know I'm going to be wrong sometimes. It's very good that sometimes they ignore my advice. It's just a very occasional thing where I'll be really insistent that my advice be taken.
I love both of those, and I think they are, for everyone listening, super practical pieces of advice that we tend to forget, by the way. Greg, you have completely inspired me today. I really appreciate the time you've given us on this. I mean, your passion for, like you said, energy that's good for the planet and good for your wallet is fabulous. Really, I can't wait to see what you will bring next. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you enjoyed it quite as much as I did.
Well, honestly, thank you, Tanuja. I did, because I think your questions come from such an informed place. And, we share so many things in common that it makes for a really fulfilling discussion. And also actually discover and explore a few things myself. It's been great to have this time with you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Conversations with Leaders, brought to you by AWS Executive Insights. For more on these topics, visit aws.amazon.com/executive insights. While there, visit our generative AI and ML page for more resources to help you unlock the value of generative AI for your business.